Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about Aboriginals. Now, a few things for a start. If you're a foreigner, such as American or English, or particularly Americans anyway, who haven't left their own country, you have absolutely no idea what Aboriginals are like. Everything you know about Negroes, throw it out the window. Everything you know about white men, throw it out the window. There are also yuppie Australians who basically don't know any more than you do and have the tourist image, you know, the little marketing image that they spread on tourism. They have that in their head about Aboriginals because they haven't lived in these areas. As a kid, I lived in Western Australia. And there's some parts of South Australia, but particularly Western Australia and the Northern Territory, where Aboriginals are in large numbers. In actual fact, there's more Aboriginals in the Northern Territory than there are white people. First up, as I said, just throw all your knowledge to the wind and start again. They live very differently. They think so differently, it's maybe hard to get your head around. They have been wrecked essentially. Their culture's been stuffed up a lot. Their society, rather, has been stuffed up a lot by alcohol and welfare. Now, in the mid-60s, they were proud people, and they had, they worked on a lot of these stations, cattle ranches and stuff like that. They were great and all that. And by the mid-80s, there were a lot of alcoholics, there were a lot of people, Aboriginals, who were on welfare. And right now, it's even worse. Welfare and alcohol have wrecked them and their society so much that the only place in the country where there are military on the ground 24 hours a day, inside my own country, is in some of these Aboriginal reservations that have gone crazy, where there are 10-year-olds who rape girls in their late 20s, girls who are 4 years old. It's not terribly uncommon to see a girl 5, 6 years old with sexually transmitted diseases. I'm not joking. They started a program, usually with welfare you get money. Well, they started a program whereby they would only get 1/3 of their money and the rest is like a food stamp system, and they can use it to get clothes and stuff like that as well. And they said it was racist, and they were right. And I would have liked to bring it in for white people, and they since have brought it in for white people, because I was in a shop and I seen this thing on the wall of the shop in this welfare area locally near where I used to work, and I asked about it, and they said, yeah, that's that system. And I said, yeah, interesting. I thought it was coming, and it did. And some people who believe they can't handle their money, they can actually volunteer for it. Drug addicts, proven drug addicts, heroin addicts and that on welfare, a lot of those, they put them under that system. That's the more gnarlier side of them in some of the outback areas. There are also ones which I don't really consider fully Aboriginal, and some of these other Aboriginals I've seen on TV, them saying to some of the ones in the city, I don't consider you a real Aboriginal, I consider you a white person. Now that's because there's some of these city Aboriginals who we get down here in the south, and they are about 5% Aboriginal, and they somehow consider themselves more Aboriginal than they do white. And I am not joking when I say they are literally whiter skinned than me. They have blonde hair, blue eyes and stuff like that as well. And the only difference you can find in them may be slightly to do with the shape of the nose or something like that. I don't consider them Aboriginals either. and neither do some of the full-bloods, which is apparently a bad term. Even calling them Aboriginal, or even calling them Abos is apparently a bad term now. Every term they have, before you know it, it's derogatory and you've got to use a different term. So now they're Indigenous for this decade, and then that'll become a derogatory term and they'll want to be called something else. But anyways, they think very differently. Materialism is just not in them at all. They will load up a lot of people in a car, and they changed the laws in, I think, the early 90s or the late 80s, I think it was the late 80s, to stop them doing what they done, which was basically, we got like pickup trucks here that we call utes, and what they basically are is they're like a family car with the front two seats. These are factory-made things you can buy, not crapo conversions. They're built like this in the factory. This is very common to have this thing, which is essentially a family car, and you've got the same engine and all that in the front two seats in the cabin, and you got the bed in the back, the truck bed in the back. And they used to get these, and they'd have 18 or 20 people in the bed of this, what's essentially a light truck in a car body, a ute. And then they banned them from doing that. But they said, no worries, 18, 20 people. I've seen them saying this on video. There's a series called Bush Mechanics. You should go and watch it. Type in Bush Space Mechanics. That's hilarious. That shows you some of the things they get up to. Some of it is a little bit exaggerated to what the real scenarios usually end up being, but it gives you an idea a bit what they're like. The other thing which you find a lot with these 5% fake abos, washout abos, as I sometimes call them, that love to pull the tourist line and do all these Aboriginal paintings but barely have a skerrick of Aboriginal in them. They won't have the accent in the rural outback areas, places like where I grew up as a kid. They have an accent, and I'm not going to imitate that accent. Actually I will. Hey old man, look at her down from, and they come up here with a truck, and they're looking for some water, and they said, you got some cigarettes? So I said, you know what, mate, that's what the accent sounds like. You will come across a whole bunch of yuppie Australians who you say to them about the Aboriginal accent, and they'll say, what accent? Aboriginals don't have an accent. Real ones do, and it comes from speaking the native Aboriginal tongue. And you may want to know, can I speak it? The answer is no, because it varies from state to state. It actually varies from area to area, and it's due to the fact that they often used to name a person after a tree or a plant, and when that person dies, it's just it's offensive to show any images of them on TV, so you'll see things at the start of TV programs that says, this image, this may show images of deceased persons, and it's a warning they have on the programs for the Aboriginals, especially Aboriginal related programs such as Message Stick, which is one that I used to watch here. And now we've got National Indigenous Television, which is a digital TV station that's all Aboriginal, which I've only realised existed a couple of months ago. And it's probably been on the air for longer. But anyway, they have an accent, but this thing of naming somebody after a plant, and then when that person dies, you can't mention that person, you just sort of forget about them. And the trouble is they'd have to rename the plant or the animal so they weren't saying that person's name. And then it scrambles the hell out of the language. And, but they reckon ones in different areas, they speak close enough to be able to understand each other, but, the languages essentially aren't completely the same, but they're near enough to be able to understand each other. But as soon as you cross state lines or whatever, it's just completely different. But yeah, they had something like 140 different separate regions that were tribal regions before white men turned up. And I may make a second video.